Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Joe Lowry, and today we are diving into the world of Major League Soccer. We're doing something different. We are giving grades, report cards, for every single team in the Western Conference. We will do the same with the Eastern Conference next week. I am not strong enough on my own to give grades for 15 Western Conference teams, so I have brought in the one, the only, everybody's favorite, Jeff Reuter. Jeff, thank you for being here. Have you ever given somebody a grade in real life before?
No, but as the son of two teachers, I feel like this has kind of been my destiny to end up at this place. And by the way, Taylor is sorely missed, but he had heard this is another one of those episodes where we're going to try to put Joe and I on a clock to keep the show moving efficiently, and he knows how difficult those episodes are, and he decided that this was a good time for him to take some pre-World Cup load management time off. So Taylor, enjoy your time in the Bahamas. We will probably hear from you tomorrow. And yeah, Joe, we are handing out grades for the Western Conference because it's been the Bestern Conference so far this year.
You know, as a desert dweller over here in the Southwest, I'm sick of all the Eastern elites. So we're going Western Conference first. What's the expression, West Coast, Best Coast? I don't know if that's true. I don't live on the coast, but I feel more drawn to that side of things. So that's where we're going to go. Jeff, you're spot on. Taylor is in the Bahamas. He's not at all dealing with sick children, so I'm sure he will get the same amount of enjoyment out of both of those experiences. Before we go, and we are going to get going here because we've got a lot to get through on today's show. Before we do that, I don't know if people out there have heard, we are doing a live show, live, in person, physical. We will be there, really and truly, at the El Rey Theater in Los Angeles on Thursday, June 11th. That is the opening day of the World Cup. Come hang out with us. TSSWorldCup.com has all the info you need. Jeff, let's get right into this. I've tossed all 15 teams in the West into a random order. We're going to go through one at a time. We're going to get a 3-minute timer for each team. We've also got a little surprise from Jeff at the end of each of these team sections. Jeff is going to give us his team all-star for each of these to give at least a little bit of positivity, even for the teams that maybe haven't been super positive to start this season. So, Jeff, let us get going. The timer's starting in 3, 2, 1. The Colorado Rapids are our first team, and I will go first on this.
Please.
I'm giving the Rapids a strong, hearty A. One of the surprises of the year for me. You know, I didn't have a lot of belief that they could turn this group of players into a group that I think can threaten some of the better teams in MLS. And yet we've seen them do that. Now, they lost big to Whitecaps over the weekend, and they were very much not in that game. But before that, just days earlier, they had a short rest game against LAFC, and they were very much in that game and held LAFC scoreless on the road at BMO. This is, I think, a good team, and I did not expect them to be a good team. I don't think they're a truly great team. I think they're still either time or pieces, or maybe both away from that being true. But if you told me that the Rapids were going to put in these level of performances against Miami's and LAFC's and win other games as well, I would not have believed you when the season started. That's an A for me.
And fair enough. And I think that I gave it a B because I think I'm seeing a lot of the progress, but right now, there's still, the game model isn't really giving itself room to get tight and to close games out. There's a lot of kind of back and forth in some of these games. And you are right, Joe, against some more credible opponents lately, it's been getting there. So maybe I'm being a little harsh on this curve here, but I'm still looking and saying Zach Steffen is underperforming massively. I think that he's been kind of bottom 5 in goal. Teams are generally still getting the 10th or 11th most chances against Colorado of any opponent right now in Major League Soccer. So the defense is still not funneling in a way that is going to prevent Zach Turner from Zach Turner. Zach Steffen.
That's a Zach Turner freeze, I think, to you, Jeff, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was citing, of course, the forebear from the 2022 World Cup cycle. Anyway, it's one of those where it's like they're not making his workload any less, and so therefore, when he's overextended, sometimes, like as we saw in Toronto, one mistake can kind of beget another. So, the other thing I would say is they're dead last in utilizing set pieces for shots, and just like you kind of understand that's why they're not tying games right now, is that they're just not really getting those fine margins. So they're on their way. I hear a lot of glowing stuff about Matt Wells. I think that he's kind of the new in guy. He's so hot right now, Hansel. But right now I would just say good, solid B, room to grow.
And I know I'm the managers matter less than we think they do guy, and I still believe that. I do think we have real evidence in MLS and also in other places that if you find the right coach who has a clear vision and communicates that vision effectively, that can elevate your group. I think about Wilfred Nancy in Montreal and then later Columbus doing the same thing with two largely, maybe that's a little unfair to Columbus, but not great roster. Certainly Montreal wasn't a great roster. I think about Jesper Sorensen doing that in Vancouver, where the talent now I think is quite good, but it wasn't being unified in a way that actually allowed it to grow and thrive. And I think Wells has done something similar in Colorado. Jeff, who's your all-star for the Colorado Rapids?
Rafa Navarro, who I think is finally getting his due for what is actually his third consecutive All-Star worthy season, probably leading the line. But I mean, he's absolutely feasting, 7 goals in 11 games. But he's always been as good as his service, but he's always been a little bit better, right? Like, he's just one of those strikers that generally you kind of trust will be the sieve that everything kind of works and funnels to. Just been really impressed with him, and it's good to see that strike rate continue.
Agreed. That would be my pick for the Rapids as well. Our time is gone, Jeff. Let's move on to the Seattle Sounders. How would you grade the Seattle Sounders based on their 26th season so far?
I'm giving them an A-, but it's just that thing where it's like the pupil that can be setting the curve, and so you're trying to kind of light a fire to them and give them a 93 to show them what's going on, right? And there's just like
this guy does know the teacher lingo. I like this.
I told you, I warned you.
I believe it, man.
Look, I feel fine that I picked them to win MLS Cup. I do. Everything that I've seen from them in CONCACAF was really credible to a way where it's like, I think that this group is actually better calibrated to get through those crunch time games than they were last year when they had a couple more cerebral players or guys who wanted the ball at their feet in the final third, right? I like some of the shifting that Brian Schmetzer is doing to get them better at defending on their heels. I think Alex Roldan as a right-sided center back is actually working pretty well for them, and gets Ranzi in as well, which gives them a little more dynamism on the right side. Nuhu so far has been good Nuhu to start the year more often than kind of scatterbrain Nuhu, which is also useful. But I'm still just a little bit worried. Like, it doesn't look like they're always as locked in as they were in that CONCACAF leg against Vancouver. And I think that that's kind of where the bar is and where I want to see them more often. So There's a little room still to grow, but things are really going at a good clip. Not generating a lot of chances, but not giving up about anything at this point either.
Yeah, the MLS performances for Seattle have been pretty uninspiring, I think, so far, where it's been a lot of fine margins. They've also, though, been missing a whole bunch of bodies. And they've been dealing with CONCACAF play. They're just now sort of out of CONCACAF since they lost in the quarters and able to get their legs under them a little bit for the cadence of the MLS regular season. And so they've been basically dealt a harder hand along with LAFC and some of these other teams in the West, right? And certainly teams in the East. They've been dealt a tougher hand, of course, by making that deeper run in CONCACAF. And so one of the takeaways for me, for the Seattle team, who I've given an A, so we're basically in the same ballpark, is that their depth is still legit. I mean, that they can plug Alex Roldan in at center back, and he does okay. They can put Costa Rienzi at right back. They can deal with the absences of Pedro de la Vega and these other pieces where they have been quite injured. It's a difficult moment for the Sounders in that way, and they've still basically kept things running. I mean, they have a better points per game tally right now in MLS play than LAFC. Now, LAFC have more CONCACAF play, so it's not apples to apples. It's more apples to oranges. But still, I think Seattle have done very well for themselves, sitting fourth in the Western Conference, doing more than just treading water while dealing with a short squad and extra games. To me, that feels like a win. They're not, again, they haven't really impressed me so far this year in a lot of ways, outside of that series against Vancouver and then a little bit later in CONCACAF. But in MLS, I think we all know that that's going to come. So, Jeff, who is your Seattle Sounders All-Star?
And by the way, I couldn't agree more just about like how they're managing the injuries. My thing is, like, at this point, I wouldn't even try to really push De La Vega back into the lineup immediately or maybe at all unless like performances demand it. Like, I think that the attack looks more natural with Rusnak being that sort of focal point of facilitation and Ferreira picking up a couple more of those touches than trying to like get De La Vega in and kind of throw off that. So neither here nor there, but just the injury might be one where he's got to be Il Signo in the second half of the season. All-Stars Chris Roldan. I don't know. It's boring, but like it's the right pick. You could make a couple of other more fun picks, right? Like Paul Rothrock has continued to validate his contract and do a lot of some of their most fun stuff. Fun, scrappy, right? Scrappy can be fun. And then Andrew Thomas, I think, in the league has been really good. Not getting a lot of volume of shots against him, admittedly. Again, this is a really defensively strong team in front of him, but he's making that transition away from Stephen Fry every single game a little bit easier to see, I think, for Sounders fans.
I like it. Jeff, let us move ourselves on to Austin FC. I'll grade them first. Okay. I have given Austin a C- so far this season. Yeah. This team is not complete, and so I want to hedge with that. Owen Wolff, it sounds like, is going to be back very soon, which is really good for this Austin team because it sure seems like there's going to be a lot of creative weight on his shoulder. And then Brendan Vasquez, who I imagine we'll see mostly after the World Cup break, though it's possible we see him in bits and spurts. When I talked to him before the season started, he was targeting April to sort of start getting back on the field a little bit, but that doesn't look like 90 minutes, right? That looks like 10, that looks like 20, that looks like 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, that sort of thing. Austin are not done. I'm just not a believer that you plugging in Owen Wolff and a striker that's dependent on service and Brendan Vasquez is going to transform this team. I'm just really, really not there. I know Austin take care of business against an in-state rival in the Houston Dynamo over the weekend, and they deserve some credit for that. They're sitting 13th in the Western Conference. They have not picked up points at a good clip. Jeff, I don't know that there's a real reason for me to believe in this team. In fact, I think it is more likely that we see some turnover on the Sporting side of this club than we see Austin really climb their way into an automatic playoff spot. Am I crazy for that? Where are you at here?
No, I gave them a D.
Nice.
So I was even a little bit more harsh. It's hard to think of another scenario recently, Joe, where a designated player has been nearing their comeback. And I'm not feeling like, oh, that's going to make the team a lot better. Like, that's not how MLS is supposed to work when you only have 3 of those things and you can't trade them anymore, right? Like, you are truly supposed to have that dependability of like, okay, he's coming in and that's going to make everything easier because we built this team around it. And I just don't see how this team was really even built for Brandon Vazquez, which is not a sentence I should really be in a position to say either, but with how much they spent on the transfer fee for Brandon Vazquez, that's how this roster really had to work to be most efficient. So there's just a lot of confusion on that one. I think they have the 3rd lowest XG generated, the 4th friendliest opponent XG. I was looking at their high regain stats on FOTMob too, and I think that they're 4th lowest, so they're not even really harrying teams as they're trying to build up out of the back around them. So I'm with you, Joe. Like, I'd be wondering about that sporting department. Like, there's just a point where is it a coach? No, it can't always just be a coach. That's just too. You actually compound issues so much more if you continue to give sporting directors too many coaches in a row, and I think you've seen that the world over and in MLS. So,
well, and I think the question is for this Austin team: do you let Rodolfo Borrell have another transfer window? Where this transfer window is unique in that it comes earlier in the calendar, right? Than every other MLS summer transfer window. Because of the World Cup break, there's only 14 games for everybody, and then they take the break, and then you get the transfer window. So you can have players in a different way to impact your season than we expect. Are you going to let Rodolfo Borrell spend another 8 figures on another Brandon Vazquez or another 8 figures on Amirtu Uzuni? Even in this sort of assuming that you let Uzuni leave. And that's what Borrell has done well, is let these guys move out the door and get decent returns. But Uzuni, there were some reports from Tom Bogert about them wanting to move on from Uzuni over the winter. If they do that in the summer, are you really going to let Borrell pick that guy? I would think, and I want to hear your all-star, Jeff, after this. I would think that there is truly no sporting director in MLS whose seat is toastier than Rodolfo Borrell. I think there are others that should be toasty. I think his is the toastiest. Jeff, whose all-star candidacy are you really backing from this Austin team?
There's like 5 active guys in Major League Soccer who feel like a remote candidate for a statue at their team's home stadium, and I think Brad Stuver has kind of cemented that status. So, like, he's getting worked so hard, guys. But his highlight reel is going to be the longest highlight reel of, like, any goalkeeper with how hard they've kept him work since they got, since they launched in Major League Soccer. And I don't think anything's changed this year. So, credit to Stuver.
All right, let's move ourselves on to the Los Angeles Galaxy. This is a Galaxy team that's dealt with some CCC play earlier in the year. They've dealt with some injuries. Jeff, how would you grade the LA Galaxy at this stage?
They were a really, really tough one for me to kind of formulate on. But I liked their performance Sunday. And so I'm kind of building off of that as what have you done for me lately? And it's a C+ rather than a C-, right? And you're right. Like, how much do you weigh Continental play in something like this? We talk about it with every other team, so it's relevant here. But in the league, it's looked too much like they're still trying to kind of play like Ricky Puig is going to come back in a couple of weeks too often, at the early part of the season especially, and it was too easy to get through this team. And what I saw over the weekend in their, because they won 2-1 over RSL, they had like a really good sort of just realization that they had to play a little bit more pragmatically, right? And it was a little bit more, who do we have? What do we have going for us? Okay, we've got the width, so let's keep spraying the ball over to Paintsel. Okay, we've got Royce, so let's make sure that we're actually playing him as a proper 10, not really have him drift back because then he can't get into the final third. Things just seemed to flow better because it looked a little less conscious. And I think that at this stage, like under Greg Vanney, that's kind of where it's got to be, is just like, this is not how the roster was designed to operate from the beginning. And so don't even really try to replicate it if you can't, because you're missing the central piece. So I don't know. I like a little bit more of what I saw lately. So I'm giving a C+. I don't know. Maybe I've got some of that, like, it's the Galaxy, they figured it out sort of hoodoo about them. But Joe, where are you? Are you friendly towards the Galaxy at this stage?
I'm also at a C+ for this Galaxy team. But the thing I'm wondering, Jeff, is if it's a little low. So here's what I think about the Galaxy. When I watch them, I have not been especially impressed with how they've played this season. It doesn't seem to me like they really have a lot of cohesion about them. It doesn't seem to me that they have a ton of really good ideas on the ball. At the same time, they're sitting 5th in MLS right now in non-penalty expected goal differential, according to American Soccer Analysis. The underlying numbers after 10 games are something that we can start to index on a little bit, and they really like the Galaxy. And at an individual level, in terms of talent, there's a lot of pieces I like in this team. Like, you look at this roster, I think the Galaxy had a really good offseason. I mean, bringing in Justin Hack, bringing in Jacob Glesnes, bringing in João Klaus, who's now going to miss until after the World Cup break, and that's a big loss for this team.
Big loss for Germany.
It was a strong offseason in terms of additions. And so maybe this is a case where the talent really is carrying some. And the fact that they have put up such strong underlying numbers, even with CONCACAF play, is something that I should be weighing a little bit more heavily. I'm just still bogged down a little bit. And maybe it's the results. Maybe it's the fact that, again, they just don't look super cohesive and dangerous when I watch them. So there's some more thinking that I want to do about this Galaxy team, and we've got lots of time in this MLS season to do that. But I mirrored your grade. C+, they're doing fine. But when you look at the results this season, it hasn't really been more than fine. And I feel like a C+ reflects that. So that's what I'm at on the Galaxy. Very curious to see what happens next for this team. Jeff, which player has really caught your eye from this Galaxy group?
Well, let's ride the recency bias train here. I think it's amazing how easy it is to forget Marco Reus is in Major League Soccer.
Yep.
Which just 5 years ago, I don't think I would have ever expected he would have been so overshadowed on like the depth chart of stars across the league that like season pass or us are like just going to be generally keeping our eyes towards. But he's looking a lot more comfortable this year. He's looking like he knows what his role is. He's got a little bit more freedom maybe to, again, stay in the final third. Great free kick also over the weekend, which is just, again, it's great that Marco Reus is in this league, and it's wild we don't talk about it more.
Yep, I think that is all more than fair. Jeff, one more team, then we're going to take a break. Minnesota United. How do we grade Minnesota United at this stage in the season? I have given them a B. Where there are some growing pains, and there were some growing pains early on. Cam Knowles was trying to figure out exactly how he wanted to set this team up. He's also trying to change this team a little bit, where they've been more patient in possession this season than they were under Eric Ramsey. Certainly last season, their passes are not as vertical. They've also been a little bit more willing to press more often, where Eric Ramsey's Minnesota United team spent a lot of time aggressively pressing after they lost the ball, but then they spent a lot of time in their own third as well. And that's really what we think of when we think of Minnesota United under Ramsey, is defensive third and then set pieces. And they've kept some of those things, but they have evolved, and you can see that in how they played this season. I think it took them a little bit of time to find that, but now this to me looks like a team whose level didn't really drop all that much from last year to this year. I don't think that should be the standard for Minnesota. Like, improvement should be the goal, and I don't think they had the offseason for that, and I don't think their performances have really reflected this idea of improvement. But to me, this has looked like a team that is capable of hanging with some of the more difficult teams to beat in the West, and for that reason, I've given them a B.
I also gave them a B, and for a lot of the same reasons, right? Like, in possession, it looks, more like Heath ball, I guess you would say. And keep in mind, that was always like the strength of an Adrian Heath team, was the fact that like he emboldened his players to trust their instincts. And so when you see like Joaquin Pereira and Tomas Shankalai kind of given that sort of ability to be the double tens in tandem, and a lot of this is sort of taking what the game gives them. Like, that is more entertaining than what they were seeing last year as a fan base. And so, like, I'm excited about that evolution of it. I agree with you, Joe. I think that they haven't really sacrificed many of the principles that made them difficult last year, which is good. But the defense does look a lot shakier without Michael Boxall. And so I think that there is a lot of, the team had projected he would be back and hopefully back to play by the end of April, and he hasn't come back yet. And Andy Greeter of the Pioneer Press has reported he's like starting to ease back into training, but that's been a little slower. And now, granted, New Zealand's in the World Cup, so of course, like, a lot of these times are going to be skewed by that. But if they don't get him back soon, or to the extent that he was last year when he was a viable finalist, or should have been a finalist for the Defender of the Year, rather, they need to kind of figure out how they're going to settle things in the back third a little bit more. So. Yep.
It has surprised me about how much fun Minnesota has been with the ball this year compared to how stout they were defensively last year. Defensively, they've not been as good this season. We saw James Rodriguez make his first MLS start over the weekend in Minnesota's game against LAFC that they lose 1-0, despite playing pretty well. He was fun, man. He was super fun, James Rodriguez, in that game. He was, I think, the most dangerous on-ball player on either side in that matchup. And granted, LAFC had rotated slightly, so no Sun in that game. But he was an absolute bundle of joy for me as a neutral to watch. He poses some tactical challenges, I think, to the players around him, certainly. But he's still magical to watch. And I'm very excited to see more of him at the World Cup, or maybe more of him with Minnesota. Jeff, I'm sort of imagining that James is not going to be your all-star pick for Minnesota, given he's barely played. Who might that player be?
Yeah, it's a like-for-like switch. It's Anthony Markanich, who is
nice.
He's scoring less, right? He's not that guy who's always like the late runner on corner kicks who's just smashing in, far post chances every single week. But he's played as one of the better, like maybe top 5 left backs in Major League Soccer when you look at defensive contributions, his work rate and build up. His crossing is getting better as well. His touch rate's still pretty low, but I think it's more about how he utilizes those touches anyway, which is good when you're kind of the rare wide option in a pretty central heavy sort of formation. So it's been a really good start for him. And left backs. We need to mention left backs on these podcasts once in a while.
Good start for him. Good start for us. Jeff, we're through the first segment of this grades extravaganza. We're going to take a break and be right back with more. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. We're going to continue our grades extravaganza. Jeff Ruder, the next team that the random team generator gave me for the Western Conference is the Houston Dynamo. How would you grade Ben Olsen's Houston Dynamo in 2026?
What a random team indeed. I mean, like that's genuinely like half of my notes about the Houston Dynamo right now. It's like I still don't really know what this thing is building toward, but it's watchable and it's better. There's more going on in the final third, so I gave it a C+ because I think it's trended the correct direction. I'm still worried about Mateus Bogus, like in this, like
1 goal, 1 assist so far for Mateus Bogus in almost 800 minutes.
That many. Yeah, I mean, like, look, we talked about this before the season, but I think a lot of that has taken root. Now, look, the good news is Guilherme has been a lot better than I think a lot of us knew to expect based on his track record in Brazil and in Saudi Arabia. So he's the all-star because I just want to see him play with like more talented players around him and just kind of see what kind of fun stuff he can unlock when he's with the boys. But like, I don't know where this is going, man. Like, I can't tell you if, like, this whole thing was built with the idea of a 31-year-old nomadic Brazilian being the focal point of it. And it's fine if it is. It's just, like, I think you had to be ready for it this season. And I don't know. They mystify me. They really do. Because usually, like, most teams in MLS, like, you look and it's like, okay, they're trying to do this. They're in year 1 of this project. They're floundering forever because they're Montreal or DC or whatever, right? But you generally know what they're on a trajectory towards. And right now, I've lost it completely with the Houston Dynamo.
Yeah, I mean, I echo all of those things, Jeff. I gave them a C. To me, that might even be a bit generous, frankly. But I'm just a nice guy, so you're welcome.
Yeah, you are.
This is my summary of the Dynamo so far. Flawed roster, flawed results. I kind of think it starts there, right? And there's more nuance to it than that, of course. But Bogusz has not been a hit. I don't think that was a huge surprise, given the lack of structure around him. When he was with LAFC, he thrives in a team with elite talent. And then you ask him to be the guy or the guy next to the guy, if the guy is going to be Guilherme. And he's just not there, right? He wasn't very good in Mexico, and he hasn't been very good for the Dynamo. I think this was avoidable. Then you think about Ezequiel Ponce, and he's been a nothing for this team so far as their third designated player. And all of a sudden you have Guilherme, and who else, right? Lawrence Anali, who's been liberated now to play a little bit higher. He played on the right wing in Houston's loss to Austin FC over the weekend. He's been playing as a wingback this year, which I don't actually hate. I think that's a totally functional way to go. But that we're seeing, that we're seeing Ben Olsen chop and change a little bit with his personnel screams to me that he doesn't really know how to get the best out of this team. And I'd rather him keep trying things than not. Of course, that's not an indictment in that way. But I don't think there's a clear answer for how you get the most out of these players, because I don't think the players are very easy to get a lot out of. So I'm not really buying what the Dynamo are selling. Jeff, I am curious who the player is that has really popped for you in this Dynamo group. Who would your all-star be?
It has to be Guilherme, right? Yeah. And like maybe your good news is Jack McGlynn.
That's right.
Came
I
back
was
over
listening
the
when you
weekend.
said, spoiler alert, my all-star is Guilherme. And then I forgot as I was talking. So it was nice to hear you say it again just to really reinforce that point.
I did actually want to bring up Jack McGlynn, though. So
good.
That
You're
worked
welcome.
as a segue.
Perfect.
It's just now we've also shown the backstage fight between the commercials. That was going to ensue. No, we never. I think with Jack McGlynn coming back, it's like tough to tell. Like, I don't know if that's going to help Bogusz. Like, that's not necessarily the service he's been looking for necessarily, right? Like, he's going to get more touches, and so maybe that actually does free Bogusz to be a lower usage guy in the final third, right? And he gets to move off the ball more and kind of be what do we call him, Polish Rothrock, and maybe there would be a solution for him there. But unless or until that manifests, C+, but buddy, that I don't know if that was your best quarter of the season yet. I'm worried it might have been their best quarter of the season.
It seems possible. We'll put it that way. Yeah. Up next, we have Real Salt Lake. I've given Real Salt Lake a strong A. To me, this team, I thought they were going to be good. I think I had them higher than most coming into the year. But I didn't expect them to look like a team that could legitimately hang with anybody in the Western Conference. And maybe their San Diego wins look a little less impressive. We'll get on to San Diego later at this stage. But they play Vancouver tight on opening day. They beat Seattle at home. They take care of business against San Diego. They were in the game against Miami in a real way. I think this team is really, really good. I think there is a world in which Real Salt Lake end up in MLS Cup this year. And I didn't expect that at this stage coming into the season. the recruitment's just been elite, absolutely elite. And we still haven't seen the best version of this team, Jeff, which holds for a lot of teams, to be fair, around MLS. But we haven't seen Emeka Eneli and Stein Spearings playing together in midfield. We haven't seen their first choice back line. Sanabria still hasn't fully even bedded into this team, and he's already looked like the best outside back in Major League Soccer. I don't really know, Jeff, without knowing what you have, I don't know how their grade could be much lower than an A, frankly.
Yeah, I had an A. So
good man.
I'm with you. Look, they still give up golden looks, and that's a good reminder from you that like they do have like a lot of rotation along the back line right now, and that they haven't been kind of playing with their firmest of foundations, so to speak. Like that will help a lot because Rafa Cabral is facing a lot of shots right now, and I think he's making the 8th most saves per 90. And saves is like, I know like if you look at it the wrong way, it's a really noisy stat to say that means he's the 8th best, but like it does mean he's the 8th most worked, which means that you are giving up so many chances that he does have opportunities to not save the ball, right? So like you've got to focus on it that way and cut down on those. And I think that's where when you have your back line in better formation, and when you have like maybe your defensive midfield worked out a little bit more, like I think we're still missing a little bit of that teeth in the central as well. For my all-star, I mean, like I went with Morgan Giavogi because I think that Luna and Gozo are going to be surefire bets on the fan ballot. And so I'm going to let them carry that, and I'm going to make sure Giavogi gets his due because I think that the way that he works into this team, man, has been so impressive and so seamless. And it's just like this, I don't know, sometimes you watch a player and it's just like you can tell that they really enjoy like the new challenge that they've gotten themselves into, and you can just tell that he's like really relishing. And it's infectious. The whole team has carried it, but like his range of passing, man, I wasn't ready for that. I was not ready for not just the range of passing, but like the rate at which he can like view and execute these things in transition. They're dangerous. They really, really are.
The crazy thing about RSL is you probably could have picked 5 different guys for that in a reasonable way. Like Sergio Solans could have been picked. Gozo could have been picked. Luna could have been picked. Sanabria could have been picked. You picked Guillermo. I mean, this team has added so much talent, both from within and from without, and it's been super impressive what they've done. We talked about them a lot this year, and for good reason. Jeff, let's move on to another team in the Western Conference, the Vancouver Whitecaps. Now, let's do the preamble now, I suppose, on the Whitecaps, and we might end up going a little longer than 3 minutes here, I suppose. But this is the Whitecaps team, based on reporting from The Athletic yesterday. There was a special committee of MLS owners who met earlier this month to discuss, I'm just reading from Paul and Tom's piece, who met earlier this month to discuss and evaluate the future of the Vancouver Whitecaps, including the possibility of relocation. A move to Las Vegas was the chief option discussed at the meeting. The club later issued a public statement saying, over the past 16 months, we've had serious conversations with more than 100 parties, and to date, no viable offer has emerged that would keep the club here. And then they urge, basically, if you got a bunch of cash in Vancouver, let us know, and we'll make this thing happen. It's bleak a little bit for the Whitecaps right now, and it's been building and building, and it feels like it's going to continue to build towards a dramatic conclusion. Whether that conclusion is keeping the team in Vancouver or not, I don't think any of us really know yet. Off the field stuff, Jeff, has not been pretty and continues to be not pretty for the Whitecaps.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like a storyline where once you hear the statements come by over and over, and it's like at first it was Vancouver saying 18 months, right? Like, we've got 18 months to figure this out before the World Cup. We'll get there. And then there was like an MOU, memorandum of understanding, of like the city and the team kind of like, no, really, we mean it. We want this to happen. And then it was Axel Schuster speaking to, I can't remember which outlet, so apologies, saying like, we've talked to 80 groups and there's been 0 credible offers. And now to have that in a club statement, it's just one of those things where you just get like, you can't help but be a little sad that this is what the landscape is these days, right? Like, just like purely for the good of the people of Vancouver, who clearly are a fan base that loves the sport and loves having this specific team and rallies around this specific club over all its iterations, finally have it come through and be one of the best teams in the league. And like, there's this sort of like, well, what can you say? It's like, it's British Columbia. Like, how are you supposed to get land in Vancouver, right? Like, and these are the sorts of things where everyone's just like, well, there's just something that's really, really bleak about what that means, about the what this was all built on. So I hope there's a solution. It sounds like they're really looking for it, to be fair. But yeah, once you have these sort of boardroom meetings of like, well, how viable is Vegas? Like, tough.
Yep. Yeah. It's bleak right now around Vancouver off the field. We will probably do a lot more discussion about this whole situation as time moves on and as the story develops a little bit further. So we'll park that here for now. On the field for Vancouver, Jeff, I've given them an A+. I mean, this team has hit highs that no other MLS team, and that includes the Quakes, who we'll get onto, I think they've hit highs that no other team in MLS has this year, where the ease with which they're dispatching other good teams, and I think about the Rapids win over the weekend as one of those moments, is astonishing to me. Like, this team looks better than the team last year. Now, the caveat is they basically exclusively played at home through this stretch of the season. They have away game after away game after away game coming until the World Cup break, and then also after the World Cup break. So life is going to get more difficult for them, and they're not going to continue to pick up points at this clip where they've gone they've gone 9 games so far this season. They're at 24 points. Like, that is truly an elite clip. But man, this team is filthy good. They've built on all the things that made them special last year. They control games at an absurd rate. They're creating chances. I mean, they're literally good at everything. Attacking set pieces, defensive set pieces, attacking a low block, attacking in transition, defending in a high press, defending in transition, defending in a block. Like, literally everything that you could want from a team, Vancouver is that. It is astonishing to me how good their tactical approach has been under Jesper Sorensen, and their recruitment has been utterly ridiculous. Bruno Caicedo, this young Ecuadorian youth international winger, has come in. He could make the Caps a lot of money in the next year or two. The dude is unbelievable on the wing. If he learns to defend a little bit and sharpens his game, he's going to be a $10 million player. Like, it's just ridiculous to me how good this team is at literally everything, and it's so sad that they've got all the off-field stuff swirling. Jeff, what's your grade for the Caps? And then also let us know your all-star.
Yeah, it's an A+ for all of those reasons, right? It's a blast to watch, man. It really is. And like, you talk about the control, and I was looking for another way to illustrate it, because like 9 wins, 1 loss, or 8 wins, 1 loss in the league is like, yeah, okay, that starts to tell it. 6 of their wins have also been by multiple goals. The 2 times that they haven't, one, they've both been like CONCACAF influence. One was the season opener against RSL, where they had just come back 3 days earlier from Costa Rica. Okay, understand rotating for that one. And then there was the time where they had rotated, I think, coming out of the international break against Portland, and then came back in stoppage time and were able to flip a loss into a win. So just remarkable the consistency with which they're able to win, not just like win games, but like comfortably. And I went with Berhalter. You could pick any number of guys, but like, I've loved watching how like he's trusting his instincts a lot more in midfield, and he's given more freedom to go laterally, and just like it's a blast to watch him approach that sort of free 8 role this year. And yeah, I think that if he makes the World Cup, it's a completely defensible pick.
Well, there's the second team in the West right now as the standings show. Let's do the first team in the West, the San Jose Earthquakes. What a season it's been. I'm just going to read a stat, Jeff, then you can tell us your grade. They're the first team in MLS's post-shootout era to win 9 of their first 10 games in the regular season. Wow. Jeff, what is your grade for the Earthquakes?
It's an A+, but like, I know that Bruce is looming over my shoulder, like telling me to erase the plus and turn it into a minus. Like, even after his press conference after their win over the weekend, he's like, well, you know, we shouldn't get cocky. We still didn't play our game, right? Like, there's a lot of this. And it's just like, yeah, good. Like, you don't want him to be happy. I think that it would be really unnerving if after 10 games of the season, Bruce Arena was like, yeah, I think that the guys are just, they're there.
We're good.
Like, you know, like, oh, this is about to fall apart for some reason. He got a job offer, didn't he? Right? Like, and I don't think that that's happening. And it's just, it's a blast to see how many players he is, you know, kind of leaning into his bag of tricks and getting the best out of them, right? And motivating them. I don't know if it's his usual sarcasm shtick or whatever, but like Preston Judd just making like excellent movement in the final third, and Buddha really relishing cutting in on his right foot. Sekiris's range of passing and transition, and it's awesome, man. Like, it's so fun to see the Earthquakes firing at this rate. Like, that's another one of those fan bases that has, like, they've done their time, right? And it's exciting to have them unlocked in this way. It's been great.
Could not agree more. They're an absolute A+ for me. I mean, they have been one of the stories of the season so far. They've been the best team that we didn't expect to be good. Like, there's a lot of teams that I didn't expect to be good this year, at least this good. I think about RSL.
Yeah,
Colorado,
we thought good, not great.
Yeah, right. And they have been truly exceptional. Yes, good, not great, Jeff, I think is sort of where I would have had the line for San Jose coming into the year. There's so many things to talk about with this team. Like, every piece is functioning at such a high level, where Vieira looks like a big boy out there on the field, manages to cover a lot of ground for himself and is good in the duel, and is a pretty good distributor of the ball as well from the base of midfield. Bo LaRue picked up right where he left off last year, where he was one of the surprise stories on an individual level of the season. He's a do-it-all number 8 that is really important connectively for this team. Nico Sekiris, man. There's a moment, I put it on social media, there's a moment in their 3-2 win over St. Louis where they really didn't play well, by the way, until the subs came on, and Sekiris was one of those in the second half. He hits this absurd left-footed through ball that breaks 2 lines. It was exactly the kind of pass I was talking about on a recent episode, by the way, as far as my favorite thing to do in soccer. He breaks this pass he hits this pass that breaks 2 lines and finds Timo Werner isolated 1v1 on the left wing. Sekiris's on-ball stuff has been jaw-dropping this year. I had to go back and find it in a tactical cam footage because the broadcast missed it. They just showed the pass as it was arriving at Werner, not who hit it. And I was like, that's got to be Sekiris who hit that ball because that's been his rep all season long. And Werner has been elite. If he can stay healthy, and now he is healthy, he wasn't earlier in the year, he is a top 5 player in this league. He's looked that good. Everything is clicking, and that's not even getting to Judd or Buda or Ricketts and all these Mooney and Roberts. It's just all there for San Jose. Jeff, I don't envy you picking an all-star. You didn't do that yet. I didn't miss that. Did you pick Guilherme as an all-star for this team? If so, that
yes,
would be
I once again have picked Guilherme as the all-star. That's a terrible Dynamo and Earthquakes joke, so I apologize for the insensitivities there. But no, it was Nico Sekiris, and you could have had any number of guys. It's notable as well that they are the one team to beat the Whitecaps. And granted, it was a rotated side, right? But they still beat the Whitecaps, and even with other MLS opponents have not really been able to do that. So. Everything you said about Sekiris, man. It's one of those where if the World Cup had come 6 months later, was it hosted in Qatar again? I think that he's really forced his way into, nope, you're getting a summer look, right? And suddenly you're kind of the late inclusion in Pochettino's plans. It just came a little bit too soon, I think, for this cycle. But man, it's great to see the skill set that's getting unlocked right now.
Yep. I think we're in the phase for San Jose, and we're over time, but I'm going to say this anyway. We're in the phase where the concern for them is not, the bottom's going to fall out. The concern is the roster is going to be picked apart. And Sekiris is the one that I'm referencing there, but surely they're going to get offers for Bolaru if they haven't already. Mm-hmm. They are absolutely getting offers for Nico Sekiris. It's going to be a question of can we keep these guys till the end of the season or not, because that's the level that these players are performing at. Jeff, let's move to another team. FC Dallas is up next. FC Dallas. I've given this team a C+. That sort of is my feeling on Dallas, where the team looks fine. They pretty much look like what we thought. They haven't beaten a good team so far this season. I know they have some decent performances earlier in the year against good teams on short rest, but this group really has not impressed me in a game against a half-decent team. They've picked up their points in games against pretty bad teams. There are 3 wins this year: Toronto, Houston, and DC United. That just doesn't do a lot for me. When I watch this team, they look fine. They look like a team that's destined to be 7-9 in the Western Conference, and 7-9 in the Western Conference gets you a C+. Jeff, where are you at on this team?
Yeah, I guess a B-, which is a polite C+. It's a good team, but they can't really generate enough luck to then take advantage of that luck, right? There isn't much that's unpredictable about how they're going to do things. They keep games more contained, maybe I would say, than almost any other team, where it's the focus is much less or much more on keeping this thing from getting expansive so that they can make sure to use physicality as an advantage, right? They're in the middle of the pack in terms of generating expected goals, but I think top 5th or so in preventing them. So just really keep games close, and it works for them, right? When you have a strike tandem, that's kind of some of the ball you have to play is, right, where you just all you have to do is have every single one of your chances be high conversion rate because you just have that sort of bodies and that service that's funneled for a pair of strikers. I don't know. I just it's not fun. That wasn't a fun lecture. I got into lecture mode. I hate when I get into lecture mode, but again, the son of 2 teachers. So
listeners, Jeff pulled out that pointy stick that teachers have when they're at the chalkboard and they're pointing to things. Jeff has one of those, and don't fact check that.
Yeah, it was rough. I was using a tray, with overhead markers and all of it. It was chaos. Whatever, B-. It's FC Dallas. Again, there's just a lot more interesting stuff going on in this league right now, but they're getting results, and I think that they're probably that game that a lot of teams are still willing to rotate for, that they're maybe taking advantage of some matchups. I bet if I would look at lineups, I would see a couple of those sacrifices for Dallas.
And I do think for Dallas, we made this caveat for a few teams. I am eager to see them with their best lineup for a few games in a row. And I don't know that because of when we saw Santi Moreno join this team very, very late in the transfer window, don't really know that we've gotten that yet, nor do I know that Eric Quill really knows what his best 11 is, which is fine. I'm sympathetic to that. But there's a world in which we get a few games of Farrington, Musa, Moreno as a front 3, and you have Johansson sort of bedded in and getting runs of games on the wing-back spot, and this team starts to cook a little bit. I think there's a world in which that happens. I'm just still not a believer that this team against a better, more difficult schedule than they faced so far is really somebody that other teams are going to be panicked about. They're going to be panicked about Musa. They'll be a little bit worried about a few other pieces, but there are many other teams in this league where you're panicked about more than just one player, and I think that's kind of where Dallas are right now. Jeff, is your all-star anybody other than Petar Musa, or should we just move this sucker along?
Let's just move this sucker along.
Beautiful. Short, sweet. You know, where we're going to take this sucker is to a break. And we're going to hear about some lovely goods and services that you can purchase, dear listener. And after that, we're going to talk more MLS. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. Those are some good goods and services, I would say. I very much think so. Maybe less good. Sporting Kansas City, Jeff. Where do you grade Sporting Kansas City? Are they going to have a pretty stern talking to from their parental unit post report card giving?
I don't know if their parents are coming to conferences at this point, right? Like it's an F for sure, right? And it's the reason that all other teams are above an F is like you can't really compare anyone else to them when you look at like how poorly all this came together. And it was so predictable, right? Like I think that was the story of late January and February coming into the season. It was like a little bit about CONCACAF and like all of the MLS teams involved. And it was a lot of, does Kansas City know the season is about to start? And it still looks like they're kind of in that mode, right? Just dead last in a lot of metrics to such an extent that we've never seen a team before. It's an F. There's really like, it's hard to find silver linings in like the evidence, Joe. Like, do you start to see like this is where this is trying to build towards? Like, are you starting to see kind of like those sprouts of grass come through the rubble at this point?
Yeah, I am, in that things are bleak, right? And David Lee shows up in Kansas City, and I maybe even imagine that things were a little bit more bleak than he thought they were going to be. There's no like scouting or recruitment analytics staff. In Sporting Kansas City, hire a couple of analytics people, but they're more on the performance analyst side, less on the recruitment side. And I think the recruitment side is where we often see analytics having a lot of value. Not that it doesn't have value in other phases of an organization, but David Lee gets there, and there's none of that, and there's one scout, right? So that's not a soccer club. Like, that's not an MLS club. That is a USL club level of staffing, and wouldn't even be tops in USL in that regard, right? So there needs to be more in terms of the organization. I have to imagine, like, David Lee, when faced with the option of, hey, we can go out and spend money right now on a DP, we can do all this stuff to build the roster and be less embarrassing this season, but we can do that with barely any information. Like, we can do that without a scouting staff. We can do that without a data staff. We can do that without real support in the front office. That seems like a setup for making bad decisions that really hurt you in the long term. And it sure seems like Lee just decided not to do that and decided to move very, very slowly in the winter transfer window, or at least slower than a lot of teams, and maybe he tried to move a little quicker than it looks like, but the deals didn't come off, or whatever it is, right? Again, there is not a front office there. Mike Burns is gone. It's David Lee, and they're hiring analytics people for real, and they've got some scouting stuff, but like it's slow and steady wins the race here for Sporting Kansas City. And as unfortunate as that would be for a fan, I see the logic behind it. I would rather avoid making a decision that has maybe an 80% chance of going bad because we didn't vet it properly. I'd rather an MLS just not do that and wait till the next window when we can make a better and more informed decision. That would be my choice every time. And it seems like that was David Lee's choice, and it's frustrating as a fan. I get that. I've also given them an F because they're the worst team in the West and the worst team in MLS, and maybe one of the worst teams MLS has ever seen. But this is an organization that was in a unique position, truly, where they just did not have a reasonable amount of people in the soccer department. How are they supposed to make decisions? How are they supposed to build from that? Well, it's going to take time. And this is part of taking your medicine to unwind all of the chaos, really, and all the lack of infrastructure that existed under Peter Vermees. Sometimes you got to take your medicine. Maybe this F is going to help them realize the errors of their ways. I think they already know, though, Jeff, like, to actually answer your question. Yeah. They know how bleak things are, and I think they have a pretty good idea of at least steps to get them out of the mire. And that is something. So I've given them an F also, of course. But, yeah, I have some belief in the long-term vision. But the short-term stuff's going to be super bleak, and it's going to continue to be bleak. Jeff, did you do an all-star for Sporting Kansas City, or are they undeserving?
I chose the fans for bothering to show up for the demolition phase of the next project. I will say, though, like, if we're doing niche, like, soccer comedy films, like, I'm not giving this a TV series, but like a nice 90-minute indie buddy comedy. David Lee leaving City Football Group and its robust sporting infrastructure around him to walk into Sporting Kansas City. I think that you could pull off 90 minutes of material there. I really do.
Yeah, it's like city boy goes to the country and realizes
it's like that.
What life is like, sort of. Yeah,
Very like that.
I think that fits. We need a shot of David Lee on a farm or something like that, maybe in a barbecue joint, like really, really getting the elbow.
Finally unbuttoning like his top button
exactly.
at the barbecue as he's flipping the burgers. And he's like, yeah, he's part of us. He's part of our community now. Yeah.
One of us. All right, let's move on to the Portland Timbers. Jeff, I have given the Portland Timbers a C-.
Sure.
And my top line note is this team isn't good. I think we have seen now, to be fair to Portland, they've gotten a couple of wins recently. They barely beat LAFC's B team. That's a little unfair. They beat LAFC's B team. They were the better team in that game. They beat San Diego, and San Diego continue to shoot themselves in the foot, which we'll get to very shortly. But they have picked up some wins. I'm just not buying it. I'm just not buying what the Timbers are selling. I'm not buying that the talent is good enough to be a serious team in the Western Conference. Maybe to be a playoff team, sure. I can see that. Once you get past 6, maybe 7 teams in the West, I think pretty much is wide open. So Portland could be that, but similar to my reasoning with Dallas, that gets you in the C range. And so I've given them a C-. I don't think this team is super well coached. I don't think the roster has been built effectively, and they don't look like a team that is actually scary when they're out there on the field. Velda has not been as good this season as he was to close out last season. The striker spot's a question mark. I think the opposite winger to Velda is a question mark, and DaCosta is a question mark. And they're all sort of question marks trending towards at least DaCosta, towards I just don't believe in you as a difference maker in MLS. I think the midfield could be quite good. I think there's some talent in the back line. It's just not enough. And when you're just not enough, Jeff, you're getting a C or a C- in this case for me.
Or a D for me. I mean, like, I'm with you. I think it's a talent thing. Like, I really do. And I think that over the last few years, we've really changed what, like, a functional sort of, I guess you would call it in other leagues, mid-table, but, like, let's say, like, a fringe playoff team looks like in terms of talent, right? Like, I think that this looked like one 5 years ago, but now when you think of, like, okay, San Jose and the strides that they were able to make in Vancouver and Real Salt Lake, like those are 3 clubs that you would generally say Portland has tried to at least maintain the level with or stay ahead of historically since they came into the league. And right now they're just not doing that. And, they've got a little bit more scrap about them this year. I'll give them that. Like, I think that they've looked a little bit more bought into the fight. But again, that's some recent results really kind of maybe skewing my perception of that a little bit. But yeah, I'm giving them a D, and I've got Cole Bassett just because I think that I'm seeing it's another case where a young midfielder moves to a different team in MLS. We've actually seen quite a few of these in the last couple of years, maybe more than it feels like we should have. But I think that he's been one who's really taken to life in Portland and enjoying just kind of trying some new stuff under Phil Neville, which I would imagine comes with a lot of freedom. So
good for him, man. Good for him. I love that. Let's move on. St. Louis City, Jeff, are up next on this list. How would you grade St. Louis? They're sitting second to bottom in the Western Conference right now. They're 14th out of 15 teams. What did you give them? What letter? Tell me. I need to know.
C+. Okay. Right? And it's just one of those where it's like, I see where it's going. Like the underlying numbers are starting to underlie, right? And I think that you're just kind of starting to see like where they're trying to take this thing. And they were ahead. I guess I had to check the timestamps to make sure that I wasn't just like imagining this for a second in the 52nd and 53rd minute over the weekend. They were beefly breeding.
Right there. It's right in there.
Briefly beating.
First try.
That's way tougher to say than you think. Difficult. San Jose. And granted, they were at home, but like they had been able to harness something, and they were ahead of one of the 2 best teams in the Western Conference for 5-7 minutes, and then they blew it from there. But I still think that there's a lot of evidence that this team is building towards something under Yohan Tomei and Corey Ray. And so I got a C+, but there's a lot of room for improvement. And I know it's kind of funny when you're seeing like C+ for a team that's below Portland, and I gave them a D. It's like, okay, well, expectations and all that sort of stuff.
I might be wrong for this, Jeff, and we're definitely in the ballpark. I gave them a B-, which is quite generous. I'll certainly admit that. They have the second worst record in the West, like we said. But their offseason was huge. Like, they chopped and changed a ton over the offseason. And I think relative to expectations, this team is doing okay, where they have some additional games on the schedule that could allow them to catch up a little bit in the Western Conference right now. They played 9. The team above them is Austin with 10 games. They're 4 points back. They could basically be level with Austin. I don't think they've been dramatically worse than Austin or Houston or the Timbers or FC Dallas. I really don't think so. They've had a pretty difficult schedule to start this season. And I totally agree that the vision seems reasonably clear to me. And part of that's because I've got a piece about St. Louis and their vision coming up on Backfield shortly, either this week or next week. And so I've had some clarifying conversations about some of those things, but I think it's also there in the tape Where in that game against San Jose, granted a rotated San Jose team, and they lose that game. So again, maybe B- is a little cushy here. But in that game, I think we're starting to see the possession principles come through for St. Louis, where we're seeing all these really nice third-man runs out of midfield that look almost San Diego-y, but with more numbers behind the ball, so that there's not quite as much transition risk, and that's one of the things San Diego's really struggling right now. It's one of the things Columbus really struggled with under Wilfried Nancy was defending in transition, and St. Louis are kind of building in a protection against that. And I think their performances have been far better than the results so far this season. Between that and the fact that, again, relative to expectations, and my expectations were low, this team looks pretty decent and has been in a lot of these games. That's why I landed with the B-, but I could be swayed to drop that down a letter as well. Jeff, who is your all-star at this stage for St. Louis City?
I actually want to defend your stance on
good.
The performances have been better than their results. You know, I've got like just an XG versus expected goals against scatter plot, which you can do for free on the American Soccer Analysis Viz Hub, which is this amazing project that Cat Bush has helped generate. And when you look at this, like the two closest teams to them in terms of like level on expected goals against and like just between them on expected goals for are Toronto and FC Dallas, who are two teams that are 3-4-3 exactly. And I think that they've had some results where it looks like luck's just kind of bounced their way. They've had the ball fall to the striker at the right moment at the right time, whether it's Musa or Sargent, against Colorado. And that's the difference right now that we're talking about with St. Louis. So like, I think that in terms of the underlying numbers, like they are playing like a team that could be much closer to the playoffs than the standings suggest. So I would actually expect them to improve if their performances sustain. But when you score a worldie that I still remember like 4 weeks later, and you're still performing well, Marcel Hartl, like, yeah, sure, great. You're the all-star. I want to see you do that. Skills challenge. You're a lock.
Love it. I mean, he's legit. He's super legit, and has been a really influential piece of the St. Louis team where they think room to hit another level still. So I love that shout, Jeff. 2 teams left. Let's head to California, where both of our final teams reside. San Diego FC. I've given San Diego FC a C. Is that too positive? Maybe. This is a weird team right now, man. A really, really weird team. They've got that red card streak that now is broken, but that very much set them back, and it seemed like these absolutely absurd, moronic decisions were consistently putting them behind the 8 ball in these games. And then it looked like they were kind of going to cruise a little bit to a result against Portland over the weekend. And then Jeppe Tverskov turns the ball over, which doesn't happen. Portland come down the field and score. And then later, they give up a late winner in stoppage time, and Portland walk out of San Diego 2-1 winners. Like, this team is just consistently shooting themselves in the foot. Mistakes. It's mistakes for this team all the time, which is so bizarre. Because, Jeff, when I watch this team play, in between the mistakes, they look really good. Like, in between these catastrophic, game-altering, season-defining errors, they look like the San Diego of last year. Maybe a slightly downgraded version because they're not as dangerous on the left wing. Pellegrino started this year quite well, and now he's, I think, been dealing with a little bit of an injury. I could be mistaken about that. I apologize. But there's been a bit of a rotation on that left side. And so all of a sudden, you're maybe down like a quarter level as a team, and you're making these mindless errors on repeats, and you find yourselves lower than you've ever been in the Western Conference table. It's been rough. There have been highs, but the lows have been real low for San Diego. I kind of averaged those things out and gave them a C. I'm still a believer in this team, Jeff, but they're making it a little difficult to believe right now.
I just threw a little minus on the end of the C and called it good. Nice. So yeah, we're not far off. Can I say the unspoken part out loud quick about your thing about how the left wing has gotten worse without Ahmad Pellegrino? Why is it even worse than a quarter mark? Chucky Lozano. Right. Like, I can't really overstate how big a hole they have dug for themselves in the Chucky Lozano scenario. I can't fathom why they would still so confidently posture. Why they even started to in the first place. That was like game over from there. And it's like, even if they walked it back now, it looks soft. Teams kind of know now. But when they had said back in December, he won't play here. Like, okay, well then they're just going to wait out his contract or wait for him to force a buyout. Or like, you will have to buy him out and then they won't pay a fee. Like, there's just no reason for a club really to engage with them in the transfer market to get them out of that. And so they're just setting the squad, at a loss. I don't know if they're trying to time it so that they have the right announcement, right? Like, we're only going to buy him out if immediately afterward we can say we have, let's just say it out loud, Mo Salah or whatever lined up, right? Like, sure, like, I would understand then you want to be a little coy about it because optics, but unless you have that ready to go, like this whole season, the ceiling is lower inherently than it was. So I've got a C minus, and I've also got this, like, they are the team of last year's top I think if you flip Seattle and Minnesota, which we assume was going to be the top 4 this year, right? Seattle joining that echelon.
Yeah.
The team
Vancouver,
to fall
LAFC,
off.
Seattle, San Diego.
There you go. The team to fall off, it's pretty obviously going to be San Diego, but it's just because of some of these costly mistakes, like you've said, that have cost them the results that they would have needed to stay in that top 4.
The alarm has sounded, Jeff. Give me your all-star.
Anders Dreyer, he's just that good.
Sold. Bought and sold. Bought, resold, eBayed, sold again.
There we go.
Purchased
Sold
again. LAFC, our final team in this 15-team marathon. LAFC, Jeff, what is your grade for the other side of LA?
The weirdest recency bias of like any team involved in this, because they had started so well and then they have 1 win from 5 and it was kind of a smash and grab 1-0 on the road. I'm still giving them a B+, but I'm really worried about how this thing is trending right now, because I think that there's a lot of consequence to what we had seen early in the season about running the A team into the ground and really relying on them in both the league and continental play. And now when it's rotating, there's also soreness coming off of that rotation, rather than, yes, okay, this was just part of the, you play 2, you're off 1 sort of cadence that they could have established from the start. I'm also a little worried that Son Heung-min hasn't scored yet, right? Like, and I know we talked about this like 2-3 weeks ago. Is like we weren't that worried because he was still getting assists, which means that he's at least pretty close to the final ball with where the proximity of his assists are coming in. But that's just one of those things where it's like when the record signing isn't scoring, it's ask Atlanta how that feels, right? So I'm not saying it's there yet, but like it's a little worrying. We're a third of the way through the season, or over a quarter of the way through the season, and they haven't found a way to get him a goal yet.
I am a bit worried about that, I'll admit. I will say I'm pretty much just going to pause my major worries for LAFC, of which I don't really have many in the first place, but I think there are some simmering, until they're done in CONCACAF. They are one of the 2 MLS teams remaining in CONCACAF. They've got a semifinal coming up this week. They're an A. They're still getting results in MLS at a good clip, even if they've fallen off a little bit recently as they've dealt with more CONCACAF stuff. That's fine. They are still picking up points in MLS at a very, very nice rate, sitting 3rd in the league right now. And they're still alive in CONCACAF. Like that, it's been a great start to the season. I don't think you can really, and nor are you, but I don't think anybody could reasonably twist that in a different way. And a B, you give them a B+, right, Jeff? I mean, that's reasonable. I've given them an A. I think this team has the goods to deal with these multiple competitions in a way that really a lot of teams don't. And that's pretty much popped in their results so far this season. Back at the start of this episode, I gave Seattle an A. And they are lower in the standings and also dropped out earlier in CONCACAF than LAFC did. Sure. Neither team has maybe been the most convincing in terms of creating slews of chances and being elite defensively, though LAFC have done one of those things really well. But that they are well-positioned after the busy start to the season they've had, it's a no-brainer A for me. David Martinez, by the way, also just on a shout for me. I don't think he would quite be my all-star, but you could make an argument. He has been very good this season. He's providing the creative spark that we know he can, but he's also defending. There's a couple of really good moments in that Minnesota win on Saturday where he's actually counter-pressing. And I think that's probably why he wasn't on the field before. It's because the dude wasn't really defending a whole lot. And Marc Dos Santos might be the David Martinez whisperer, and if that's the case, it's worth keeping him in the job until David Martinez is gone, man. Like, that's a huge difference-making factor for this team, to have someone of David Martinez's quality elevating that attack, which is needed, despite the absurd amount of talent they have even outside of him. That's been a fun wrinkle for LAFC this season. Jeff, who is your all-star, David Martinez or otherwise, for this LAFC team?
I had 2, so thank you for picking one of them. Devin Martinez was one of them. The other one was Steven Vuzdacio, who, like, one, I'm just glad the guy can walk. Like, some of the reporting around what happened after his injury after Dallas, I think was really scary, just about, like, the timing of, like, a couple of different leg and maybe blood vessel-related stuff. So really, really glad to hear everything's okay there. Played about an hour against Minnesota, so I guess he'd be back. But also, like, before the injury, he was so influential over every single thing that they did in midfield so quickly. And I think that his range of passing, it's one of those things where you just kind of want to, like, remember the start of the season as vividly as you remember the most recent game. So I just wanted to mention him too. And yeah, Denny Bouanga's been scoring too, so he'll be there and he'll win the skills challenge because he's done that twice. Sounds
right. Wasn't paying attention, if I'm totally honest. But
to the skills challenge. Who's you
saw
Speed? That's why. Or
I did.
Whoever that was.
Yeah, I was shown Speed. That I can say for sure. Jeff, thank you for giving your report cards. Some teams will be pleased. Other teams will not be pleased. Nature of the business, isn't it? I mean, that's how it goes. Got to have a cold and passionate heart to really hand out these grades. And Jeff, you have checked that box today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
listeners, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you a ton. We'll be back later in the week with more Total Soccer Show next week with the Eastern Conference grades. All that and so much more coming on the feed. Thank you, and we'll talk to you again soon.